Okay, let's start. Hey. All right, welcome to the third lecture, the first day we had double lectures. Welcome to the fourth lecture of human-machine interaction. As usual, the lecture is recorded, so people can also view it offline. Today we are in week 5, which is where all of you are supposed to be busy building your system. And from next week, you are going to start with testing. So testing is what we are going to discuss. This is what we are busy with in human-machine interaction. And today we are going to talk about how you're going to test. But the idea is that all of you are going to be more or less done this week. So everybody's now busy with building their prototypes? Yeah. Okay, that doesn't sound very confident. So just to keep in mind, this is the big plan, and this is where you're supposed to be. And if you are running behind, then you are going to get into problems soon. And if you think that you are getting into problems, come talk to me, talk to Sebastian, and we'll try to figure out how to make you manage to pass this block, hopefully. Okay. This is the plan for the human-machine interaction part. I didn't get any emails or anything from anybody about asking for your research questions, which is quite disappointing, because usually the research questions that the students come up with are, in the beginning, not good, and we need to talk about them, discuss them to improve them, which is what I tried to stress in the previous lecture. So if we have time today, I would like to just walk around. Hopefully this lecture will not take all the time we have reserved. So maybe I will walk around and look at your research questions and try to give you some quick feedback about those. Keep in mind that if your research questions are not very good, then your experiment plan will not be good, because you're looking into the wrong thing, and then your whole report in the end will be bad, and then you will fail. So starting with a good research question is really important to have the other steps that are following also go well. Let's see. Today we are going to talk about preparing the usability study. I'm going to also tell you how to write the test plan. So how you are going to plan the test you're going to do. And then the idea is that you're going to send me the test plan by the 19th, so that I have time to give you feedback for the plan that you have. Because this is also, again, important, because if the plan is not good, then your whole experiment will be bad, and then the results will not be that good. So, so we will start writing the test plan from this week, and you will know after this lecture exactly what you need to write in the test plan. What are we going to talk about today? We are going to go through this list step by step. Establishing your test goals, so determining what exactly you want to test in your experiment soon. Once you know what you want to test, you have to figure out how you're going to test it. And when you know how you're going to do the test, you need to determine who are your test groups are. In your case, it will be students, because this is the people that are available for you. But the idea is that you apply this also in the future if you work in a company, and then you want to design a system for seniors, then your test group will be seniors. If you want to design a system for people with a disability, then your test group has to be someone that fits that criteria. Come up with incentives to attract participants. Getting participants to join your experiment is always a challenge. So this is something that you need to work on. Collecting the participants with a screener. So just seeing who fits and who doesn't fit. We will look into this. Developing test scenarios. So test scenarios are like these stories that you are going to give your participants to walk through the experiment, and making a schedule for your experiment. We're going to go through all of this step by step. Okay, so what are the test goals? So this is something that we talked about a little bit when we discussed the research questions. Basically, you have this system. The system can have 100 functionalities. Like you're making a new Photoshop, and it has like all these things that it can do. But you cannot have one experiment that will test everything, because this experiment will take a month per participant, and it's like you cannot get results that you can compare. So each experiment that you do has to focus on one aspect of this of the system that you're making, even if it's a very complicated system. You really focus on one thing you want to test in this experiment, and then for at this moment in development, what is the most important thing you want to learn from the users, and then this one specific thing will be your main research question, which we handled in the previous lecture. Okay, so I'm not going to go over how to make research questions. Through different parts of your development process, you will have different things that you want to test. So when you are really in the beginning of the development process, you are like looking into how do I make, if you're making a website, like how do I make the navigation? Do I make it really deep with few options in the beginning, or I have it very broad and very shallow? Do I put the navigation bar on the left, on the top? These kind of questions you have in the beginning, and then in the end, you're looking more into design elements. How many pictures do I have? Do I have icons? Be quiet. So at different parts of the development, you have different goals. Okay. What we talked about last time, the most common test goals are effectiveness, efficiency, and user satisfaction. Does anyone remember what effectiveness was? Does anyone remember what efficiency was? Yes.
How good the result is.
How good?
The word for it. How effective the result is.
Yeah, okay, it's efficiency.
Efficiency.
Yeah. You're just saying the same word in a different form. Effectiveness and efficiency. What's effectiveness? Come on, guys.
How well it reaches your goal?
Not how well. It's we had very clear measurement questions for these things. Remember what was the measurement for effectiveness? Okay, so effectiveness was whether you can do the thing, whether you can achieve the goal or not, right? And how many mistakes you make while you get to the goal you want. So this, whether it's effective or not, whether it's working or not. And efficiency was how fast you reach the goal. So you don't waste a lot of time. If you waste a lot of time, it's inefficient. If you reach your goal very quickly, then it's very efficient. And then we also said there is user satisfaction. An app can work and be very quick, but then it looks really bad, and people will not have a nice user satisfaction with it. But another app will take longer time, but then everything is nice. The icons are really nice. The graphics are really nice. Even though it's less efficient, it will have a higher user satisfaction because it's a well-designed app. So when you are designing your experiment, try to think about These are like actually shortcuts. Now people look into more like user experience and things like this. But for you guys, we are going to stick to the most basic 3 aspects of usability tests: effectiveness, whether it works or not; efficiency, how fast it works; and how satisfied are the users in the end. So once you have your main question, you know what you're going to look, and then you divide it in sub-questions in order to make the problem easier to solve, step by step. So we also talked about this before. Again, this is a visualization of the process. You start with the problem description, then you have the research question, and you divide the research question into sub-questions. And then after that, you have your measurement questions for each sub-question in order to answer it. You do the experiment, you do the analysis, and then you write the conclusions about your work. Okay, how do we test? We have the system. We want to test how the interface works, if it's good or not. What we need to do, we need to make a prototype that shows the users this interface. We cannot ask them to imagine all the links on the left, imagine all the links on top. No, they have to see it. And you can test in the beginning of the process. So you're developing a system, you can test in the beginning and then use the results to guide your decisions in the development process. Or you can test towards the end. The most extreme case will be like a beta test. You already have developed the system. You just want to iron out the bugs, or you want to see whether it achieved the goals that you want or not. You give it to the people, and then you see how they use it and whether it works as you expect or not. This we already looked at. So the kind of prototypes that you have, it can be paper prototypes that show different elements of the interface. It can show the flow of the app, so you can just go from one screen to the next. You can test the interaction, so you can give the screen to a person, say, okay, I click here, and then if you click here, then you get this screen, and then you can test how the people know if they can. You test if the people know how to navigate through the app with the paper prototype. Very quick to make, very easy. You can make it into a digital. We saw some apps from Azure and an Adobe app that can simulate the interaction for you. So you have the prototype. You know what you want to test? You have the prototype that you're going to do the test on, and then you need to decide where you're going to test, and you have 2 options to choose from. One option will be testing in the real environment. So one group that did this block a year ago or 2 years ago, they had a system that showed people how busy or empty the train wagons are. And they chose to do the test in the train station because when you're in the train station, you are in the mindset that, okay, I want to take the train now. I really need to know what to do, need to know where to go, need to know what the time is. And then when people ask you the questions about, okay, hey, if we would show you this, what they did was like they had this picture of a train showing where the empty places are. And I said, okay, if you see this picture on the clock that shows you the time for the train, will this information be useful for you? And then it's very easy for the users to go into the mindset, okay, I am now want to take the train. Is this useful for me or not? Oh, yeah, this looks really cool. But when you're in the train station, there's a lot of things outside your control. You cannot, maybe at some point, a train comes, it becomes really loud, people don't feel very nice, then, okay, now their mood is affected by external variables that are there. It's very difficult to talk to people because suddenly a lot of people come by, it's very noisy. So when you're doing an experiment, you want to have as much as possible control over all the variables because you want your results to be consistent and not affected by external variables. So the alternative to this is to do the experiment in the lab. So you bring the people here, and then either you make a very elaborate setup, you make a fake train station here, or as much as possible, So you have like a TV screen. I say, imagine that this is the screen that shows you the train time, and then this would be the interface. In that case, you can also put the interface that you had on a piece of paper in the train station. You can actually put it on the monitor and say, okay, so this would be the new interface of that shows you also where in the train that people are more concentrated, where is empty. Does that look nice to you? So the advantage is that you have more control over the environment. You know that no external variables are going to affect the results. But what you lose is the realism, because it's not a train station. It's a lecture room, and this is not the train screen that shows you the time. This is just a monitor from a beamer. So there is a trade-off, and time also plays a part. How easy it is to find participants that are willing to come here, things like that. So you always have to decide whether to test in the lab or whether you want to test on the field. Very important decision that you will need to make is whether you will compare two systems or whether you will test one system. For making an experiment, it would be really, really nice and easy for you to make the analysis later on if you are going to make a new system, or like, hey, you have an existing system, and then you try to make a new version, like add an improvement, add a new feature, and then compare the two systems. Because then it's very easy. You just do a test with the first system, you do the test with the second system, and then you can compare which one you can finish the task faster. And then you say, okay, this one is always around 5 minutes. This one is already around 15 minutes. Then this one is more efficient than this one. With this one, there is 20 mistakes. This one only one mistake every time. So this one is more effective than this one. Okay. Then there's a really very clear difference between the two systems. Are you okay? Okay. When you have one system, then it becomes a little bit more difficult to get some meaningful results, because generally you have nothing to compare to, so you just have to collect some results from the user and then try to come up with some convincing arguments that, okay, according to what we find from testing this one system, we think that it is very good. But then your job will be a little bit harder. You will usually try to get some statistical analysis that can give you some significant conclusions that you can then sell to that you can then use to convince your funding agency or your manager that your system is actually working very well. But I always recommend to the students, at least at this stage, for you guys, to have two systems, like two interfaces that you can compare to each other, and then you can test against each other. Okay. The control group is a very important thing. It's when you are making a new medicine and you want to test whether the medicine is effective or not, what they always do is that they have a group that will use the new medicine, and you have a group that uses a placebo, because it has been very well proven that if you give people anything and you call it a medicine, then people will start feeling better and they will show improvements. And even though the placebo is just it can be like a Tic Tac or a sugar pill, they call it. It's nothing, but because people are taking a medicine, then they feel better. And studies have even shown that if you take 2 pills of nothing, then you feel even more better than if you take 1 pill of nothing. And if you take a pill of nothing that you pay a lot for, so if you take the 10 euro pill of nothing, then you will feel better than if you take the 1 euro pill of nothing. So it's really, really interesting effect, this placebo effect, and you really need to test against it. So that's why whenever you test a new medicine, you'll have a control group that you give this placebo to, and then you have the actual test group, the out of control group that you give the real medicine to, and then you see whether the placebo improvement is so the fake improvement should be lower than the real improvement. Because if you're getting really treated, then hopefully you will feel better than if you're taking a tic tac for the problem that you have. Okay, we're not into medicine here. We're testing ICT systems. And for us, control groups, if we're testing two different systems, would be the group that will use the original system. So, okay, so I have this this new app that will plan my trip for the train. And I think that this my app that I developed is like 10 times as good as the old app. And if I have this test, I test my app with some group, I have nothing to compare it to. So again, to compare it to, we have the control group that will use the original app, and then we have this comparison between the two results. Then you need to decide on which group you're going to test on. Okay, so I have this new app. I wanted to use it with people between 20 and 30. So then, hey, you guys will be the perfect participants. When I started testing, I thought when I started using this kind of usability experiments, and let's say that I want to just test a program that I want the whole general public to use, I thought that you will need to have as varied a test group as possible to get results from all kinds of people, so that you know that your system will work on all kinds of people. But the problem is that if you have a lot of variance in your test group, then you're introducing a lot of changes into the experiment that you want to do. When you run an experiment, you want the experiment to be as consistent as possible. You want everything to be the same, except for what you're testing for. So if we have condition A, condition B, I want to test the difference between these two conditions, and I want everything else to be as consistent as possible. So also for the test group, it would be beneficial for me if we have the test group be consistent. So try not to have a lot of variance in age, background, experience with the. So here we have experience with the web. So what if we want to use like a website interface, and we have someone who has, okay, now not many people have no experience with the internet, but someone that doesn't use the internet daily, they use it like once a week or something. And then we have other people who use the internet all the time. Then of course the results will be completely different. But then if you just average the results in the end, then you're introducing a lot of noise into your data. So try to keep your user, your participants as consistent as possible. And try to get participants that are representative to the people that you're going to test. What we are doing now in the research minor, in the 4th year, we are trying to test, to make systems for people with early dementia. So people that are just starting to have memory problems, that are having problems with cognition, thinking problems. But these kinds of people are really difficult to find. So not people that are really with dementia, people that are just starting to get dementia. The goal of the research project is to help these people stay in their own homes for a longer period of time. And we need results, but how can we get this? So we cannot find these people. There are very few people, difficult to get to. So what we did is that we looked into the research and we found what is the age group that people start getting dementia. It's around 60 to 65. And then we are getting participants that are around this age because they are more or less representative of the people that we are going to do the study on. And because we are looking more into the privacy issues, so their opinion about privacy, then whether they have dementia or not, we are hoping that this doesn't affect their opinion on privacy that much. But if you want to test things on whether this helps the person with dementia to remember better, then just testing it on someone who's 60 years old is not going to work, because they don't have any forgetfulness yet. Their memory is working very well. So also choosing the participants depends on what you want to test. You want to test opinions about privacy, then this age group is perfectly represented. If you want to test something about how can we help with forgetfulness, then people that are just old will not work. We need people that are really suffering from dementia. And then your experiment design has to change depending on that. So if you want to test something like a smartwatch interface, then you need people who are very familiar already with smartwatches, and so on. And it helps if you have people who have some motivation or interest similar to the people you want to test this on. So if you have an interface for a smartwatch application, then you want people who are interested in that kind of thing. If you have a person who doesn't care about smartwatches, and then you give him the interface, you say, well, this sucks, it's too tiny, and on my phone I can do something very much better. But of course, you don't care about people who hate smartwatches, because you're developing an app for smartwatches, which will be for the people who have smartwatches already. So then getting the feedback from these people, yeah, this interface is really bad, I don't like it, because I hate smartwatches in general. This doesn't help you at all in testing your interface for the smartwatch app. So what if it is really difficult or unethical to test on a specific target group that you want? Okay, so one example was forgetfulness. If we want to test how an app will help you with forgetfulness, but we don't have people with dementia, what we can do is design the experiment in such a way that can simulate this, make things hard to remember, or give people a lot of information, and then they will surely forget something, and then we can test how our system can help them remember things. An example here is that if we have seniors with walking difficulties and poor eyesight, imagine some senior citizen that cannot walk, cannot see, and I say, hey, do you want to participate in an experiment I'm having? Try to walk these 100 meters, put some obstacles, and we'll see how many times you fall, and then we will count them, and thank you very much for your participation. That's not going to work very well. So what you need is that you need to design the experiment in such a way that you can simulate these effects. And the solution that they came up with is this old age suit, which has a lot of features that will turn a fully competent adult into someone who have problems walking and seeing. So there is a blacked out goggles that will block vision. There is a headphones that will block out sound, so will simulate also hearing disabilities. There will be a neck brace that will stop you from turning your head left and right. You will be fixed to simulate stiffness in your neck. You will have a weight suit, so it's like 50 kilos on your chest. So then you will be forced to like walk with a hunched back. There is the gloves have thrillers. So then your hands will be shaking the whole time you're walking, and you can see like gradually you're turning into an old man. The legs have braces so that you cannot bend your knees very well, because it will just want to spring straight. So you are now limping, hands shaking, hunchback, and your shoes are also weighted down so that and are bigger size. So then you're also like dragging your feet on the floor. So suddenly we can do the test with people who have difficulty seeing, difficulty walking, even though we are testing it on a fully competent adult that doesn't have any of these problems. So when you design your experiment, try to think outside the box and try to be creative. Think about what you want to test exactly and how can you reach these test results that you want with the samples that you have. A lot of times I get the excuse from you guys that, okay, we don't have any money, we don't have any time, and it's a very like a fake circumstances that we have. But when I worked in the university, I had exactly the same situation. It's not like my professor was giving me this cash and I was like, hey, go find participants. Here's like €1,000,000 and go get some people to participate. We also didn't have any money. Sometimes we had some gift cards, like a dobon, that you can give them. But a lot of the times we just needed to use friends, family, etc. And there's also very limited time because, hey, there's a deadline here and we need to publish before the deadline. So we need to have the results within like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And this is more or less also the situation that you guys find yourselves into. So don't think that, hey, this is all very fake, what we are doing here right now. This is actually very representative of real world situations if you're trying to do experiments. When you work in a company, you make a new design for the interface, and you need to test it. You'll probably have 1 or 2 weeks. Okay, do some tests. Let's see if people like it, and then we can go on with production. The company will not wait for you for 6 months to test the interface to see if the interface is good or not. Getting the participants to participate in your experiment. Okay, so we can have the stick or the carrot to get people to do what you want. So of course, family and friends, people you know, will be helpful. There is a tit for tat. You are here in many groups, so I will do your experiment if you do my experiment. This also helps. Having some free food or snacks during the experiment will help people stay in a good mood. If you can afford it, gift cards or cash or gifts. Usually we have like also sometimes these small gifts that just make people feel, hey, at least I got something. This is also something to look into. And you can have can also design the gifts in a way that will help drive your experiment. So one colleague of mine in the university had an experiment where she was testing a new navigation interface, and she didn't give anyone any compensation to participate in the experiment. But what she did is that she bought an iPod Shuffle, so it was the cheapest iPod. And she said the one who has the best performance with this app will get the iPod Shuffle. So she's measuring the time it takes, the efficiency of that, and the best performer will have the prize. So she only has to buy one prize, a little bit expensive, but only one. And then everybody who participates in the experiment did their best and tried to do as well as possible in the experiments. And so she got good results, good data that she can use, and only had to give the one gift to the winner. But you have to be careful that if you're asking people for their opinion, and then you say, okay, then the one that gives me the opinion that I want to hear will get this result, then people will just tell you what you want to hear to get it. So you have to design your experiment carefully, make sure that the way you design the experiment helps people to do the thing that you want them to do, not to lie to you and tell you what you want to hear. Okay, the screener is a form that you use to. So if you come in late, feel free to come into the lecture room. Don't wait outside. It's fine. Let's see. Yeah, the screener form is a way to, when you're gathering participants, when you want to gather a lot of participants, you can make a form where you collect some data about the participants. So you can, it's good to get consent from the users. So if you want to share private data, you have to get consent. Now with the GDPR, you'll need to get consent for a lot of the data that you collect in order to be able to use it. So you can have questions like, hey, you accept that there may be some mild discomfort if you participate in this experiment? And yes, no. And if people say no, that you cannot use their data. So you have to collect this information from them before. But it's also good for you to know a little bit about their background, their experience, their interests. Because again, if you want people who are using smartwatches, then it's good that you have this information. You can collect it when you gather the participants. And what you can do later on is that when you analyze the data, you can accept both people. But then when you analyze the data, you say, okay, people who have no experience with smartwatches have this opinion and this performance. But people who do have experience with smartwatches have this opinion and this performance. So it will help you also later on in your analysis. You can filter out, screen the unsuitable participants so that you don't have the people who don't fit work in your experiment. So one time we were doing an experiment with the eye tracker when I was in the university, and we had people look into the eye tracker, and we tracked the positions of their eyes. But then while doing the experiment, I noticed that, so I see the position of both eyes on my screen. So my screen was here, and they would do the experiment here. And I could see very clearly that one eye, the tracking was not working very well. And then after the experiment, I talked to the guy, and he was like, yeah, because I have this thing in my retina and this eye, and it's a little bit deformed. And probably that's why the tracker couldn't lock on it. And then the data I gathered was useless because it doesn't fit with the other data sets that I've gathered. I could have saved him and myself a lot of time and effort by getting this information beforehand and telling him, well, thank you, but it's not going to work for you, so we will find another participant for that. So a very elaborate form will look something like this. If you have a whole team that is, if you have a whole team that's gathering information for you, then you will have some notes for the recruiters that, okay, we're looking for people, equal gender distribution. So if you have like 20 males and 2 females, then focus on gathering more females because we want them to be also represented in our study. We're focusing on people who are speaking English as a second language. We're focusing on people between 18 and 55, etc., etc. So these are notes for the people gathering recruiters for you. So later when you work in a company and then you send the people, the students doing stage for you, to gather participants for you, you can give them a form like this, say, okay, this is what you're looking for, go gather some people for us. So you get their name, who recruited them, and then you say like, okay, do you speak English as a second language? Yes and no. If no, terminate, because we are looking for people who are speaking English as a second language. So this is like a checklist that you go through in your experiment, and if the answer is no for any of these questions, so are both your eyes working correctly? Yes, no. If no, then terminate. Okay, sorry, we cannot use you in the experiment. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, so this is about using cable boxes for TVs. If you don't have a TV set, then also terminate. If you do have, then get the brand, gather some information, etc., etc., etc. This is a very complicated form for a big study, but for you guys, you can also keep it very, very simple. Just get name, gender, age, address if needed, email, contact them, and then gather some information. So, are you a student? Can you drive? Do you have a smartwatch? How often do you use your smartphone a day? Information like this to help you on later. Okay. Next step is the test scenarios. Test scenarios are very important. A test scenario is like this short story that you give your participant in order to put them in the mindset of doing the experiment. So like with the example of people in the train stations, if you're doing it not in the train station, you bring them here to the lab, and then you say, hey, imagine you're in a hurry, you need to go to Amsterdam, and you are not sure which train you're going to take, and you see a lot of people around you, and then you want to make sure that you can get a seat because you want to do some work on your laptop before you get to work. Okay, so then we're already setting the scene. They're already thinking about the things that they need. Now we have this interface. What do you think of it? And then you get the results that are much more relevant to your study than if you just get people, hey, hello, What do you think of this interface? Yes, no? Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye. Then you don't, they really don't know exactly what you're going for. So the scenarios are important to put the users into the context and motivation behind your tasks. And it helps put them in a more realistic situation. So for writing the scenario, you have to use the language of the user, not the product. So the language of the product would be the jargon that the company uses, but then for the user, they don't know anything about this. An example again of this is the study we are doing with seniors. We are trying to ask them whether they are okay with sharing their private information. And what the group from the previous period did was that they just went to senior citizens, elderly home, and they asked them, hey, what do you think about sharing motion sensor data? What do you think about sharing sound level data? What do you think about sharing, what was again, accelerometer data? And then the senior citizens had no idea what these people were talking about, because what the hell is an accelerometer? What's the, yeah. So these terms, this jargon, is not the language of the user, it's the language of the product. And what we're doing this period is that we're putting the questions in more understandable form, and we're more or less repeating the work. So actually we're repeating the whole thing this period, because last period we didn't do this step correctly. Examples I have are earpods and AirPods. So for Apple, this is very important difference. AirPods are the wireless things. Earpods are the wired headphones. I noticed yesterday that I have an outdated picture here because there is no headphone jack. So I had to find a new picture with a lightning connector so that we are keeping up with the times. Another example of the Apple universe is the touch bar, 2 words, and the trackpad, 1 word. So this means something and this means something completely different. But for the average user, they will always mix these things up. So make sure when you're asking people things, you say it in terms, or like when you're writing the scenario, you're using terms that the user can understand. So use a context, make a story that fits the real world story. Give the user an end goal, because if you don't give an end goal, then the users don't really know what they need to do. So you should always have an end goal that the users, okay, this is what I need to do. I will try to use this system in order to reach that end goal. And then what you're interested in is what route they will take, how long will it take them to reach that goal. Say as little as possible to present the goal. If you tell people exactly what you want them to do, okay, I want you to click on the button on the left, and then when you go, you need to choose from the list headphones, and then click OK, and then see what comes out. And then you're basically told them exactly what they need to do, so you'll get exactly the same results from everybody. You need to say as little as possible, only the essential information that the people need to do your experiment, and then see what they're going to do. And the more they screw up, the more nice data you're getting, because eventually the end user will not be told what steps to follow. They will just screw up, and you want to find out these mistakes early on in your experiment. Sometimes it also helps to use fake personas. So so when you give a scenario, you can say like, hey, imagine that there is this guy, John, with diabetes. He's been living with diabetes for 50 years, and he is losing his eyesight because of his diabetes, having kidney problems. Is very tragic. And so now put yourself in this guy's shoes, and now you want to use this injection thing to get your insulin. How do you think it's going to work? Start. And then you already put them in the mindset of this persona, because it will be very difficult to find people who fit exactly in that characteristics. in those characteristics. Let's see an example of a scenario. So an example of a scenario is that you're sitting on the couch with your father, with a computer on your lap. You have already selected a flight to Vienna. Since you do not know whether you will get the confirmation email or not, you want to have a printout of the flight details. Okay? So you're sitting with your father, you reserve the flight to Vienna, and just to be sure, you want to print the schedule of the flight before you go to the airport. So is this a good scenario or a bad scenario? Yeah.
I think you already know too much beforehand.
Okay. Where? Which detail?
You're basically saying go to this, exactly this, but this is the goal. It's not like at the end you want to know what your flight details are.
Yeah.
You say, okay, before you close it, you need to print the details.
So you need to tell them more information.
No less.
Less information. What would you tell them?
Select a flight to Vienna, make sure at the end you know what the flight details are.
Okay, so I should have, okay, it depends on what you want to test, right? If you want to test whether you can find the details or not. So here I should have mentioned, here they wanted to see whether the option for printing out the page, which was part of the website, and whether it was easy to find or not. So this part, printing the flight details, is an essential part of, because this is the goal. This is the goal that they want them to do. But there is information here that you don't need to do the experiment. I don't really need that need to know that I am sitting on the couch. I don't really need to know that I am with my father, because being with my father or not will not make printing the page more difficult or less difficult. So you're like adding more text. Probably people will see it's a big text, so they will skip it. They'll say, "Okay, I read it. What do you want me to do?" And they have no idea what's written because people are bored and they want to go back to their own thing. They just want to hit some candy from you, and then they're done. Okay, so this is also a bad test description, and your job, guys, is to find out what is bad in this description. So go to google.com, click images, type Scheveningen beach, find an image of the beach of Scheveningen. So it's clear what the problem here is. Yes, you're telling them exactly what they need to do. All right? So a better description of this task will be use google.com because I want to test google.com, and then the goal is to find pictures of Scheveningen beach. So buy something from the Conrad website. It's also very clear what's the problem here. Something. Yeah, something. Something is not specific. Yeah. Yeah. So you need to make it a little bit more. You need to make it a little bit more clear. So then it is a little bit elaborate. So blah, blah, blah. Your friend freak bought a second-hand car. So the second-hand car, and you would like to buy daytime running LED lamps, and then the steps that you want to do. So you give more details in these steps. So here, like, okay, you want to find a specific brand. So you want to check if the filtering options of this of the Conrad website are working very well. You want to see if the search options are working very well, etc. So does Camera Express sell cheap cameras? There's also, what is it? Yeah, Stefan, yeah, not clear enough. Yeah, exactly. What's a cheap camera, right? So, go to Camera Express and find digital cameras that cost less than 100 euros. Okay, this one is a little bit long. What's the problem here? Too much text that isn't necessary, right? So what is, so is it really necessary that it's a blue blouse? No, I don't think so. Is it really necessary that you know all these details? No, no one will read it. So you have to shorten it down to exactly the most important thing. So you got a blouse from this website, and you already expect it to arrive today, but it's not. Can you find your purchase history and the delivery details on this website? Here you go. Start working on this. So we have another example. Let's skip that. Test schedule. The schedule for the test is something also very, very important. Before you do the real experiment, you have to do what's called a pilot experiment. You know, when you have a TV series, the first episode that you do make of the series is this pilot, which determines whether the show will be actually made or they will cancel it. For the experiment, it's the same thing. You have a pilot, which you do with one participant at least a few days before you do the real experiment. And in this pilot, and I cannot stress this enough, you cannot do the pilot on one member of your own group, because one member of your own group already knows exactly what you want to test, already knows exactly what the experiment is like, already knows exactly what you want to achieve, so they will never fall into any of the problems that are there. You have to do the test with someone that is completely unfamiliar with your system, completely unfamiliar with your experiment, has no idea what's going to happen. And then you will see that they will do the strangest things. They will completely misinterpret the description of the experiment that you have. They will do things that are unexpected because you didn't make the description very clear. And then constantly, especially when doing the first experiment, you will need to tighten things up. You'll need to make your description a little bit more accurate so that people don't really go away and doing their own weird things and then ruining your experiment. Every time me or anyone I know does an experiment, they think they can use the data from the pilot because they think their experiment is completely good. And these are people who are experienced with experiments. Okay? Even me, when I design an experiment, I will like, hey, this experiment looks really good. I sure am sure that I can use the data from the pilot and the experiment. But always, time and time again, until today, the pilot goes completely wrong, and I need to redesign the experiment in some way, and I cannot use the data from the pilot. So make sure that there is a pilot. It will go wrong. You will fix your experiment, and then you will do the real experiment. You need time between the pilot and the real experiment to change how your experiment is going to be. You need to change the forms. You need to change the description. Maybe you need to adapt your prototype because it doesn't really work exactly the way you planned it to work. So you need at least a few days between the pilot and the real experiment to tighten things up. Make the planning for the testing sessions that you have. So you need to have at least around, let's say, 10 participants. And then you have 1 week left before you have then 1 week to write the report. So you have 10 participants, 1 week. I need to have one participant, like 3 participants every day in order to have 10 participants at the end of the week. When you plan things, make sure that you have enough time between participants that you have to, like if you're collecting some data, you want to reset everything on the prototype to the begin condition. You need to prepare new forms. If you're putting forms on paper, you need to prepare new food. You need to take a rest. Maybe you need to go to the toilet. Make sure you plan all of this in your time schedule. And also allow time in the end to analyze the data and write the report. So don't have the experiment end the day before the deadline for the report, because this will also take time. Make sure you have enough time for this stuff. Questions? We're reaching the end of the presentation. Okay, good. Everything is super clear. So let's see. So these are the steps. that you need to go through before preparing the experiment. Now you know exactly what you need to do. Again, we have the time schedule here. I want you to start from now to work on your test plan. So, what is it? The test plan that you are going to submit next week, since you now already are, well, you don't have the prototype yet, you're building the prototype, but you know more or less what you want to test, I hope, because you all have research questions. Who already has the research questions done? Okay, cool. So you should have the research questions already done and discussed with me and rephrased and approved. So you guys are really behind schedule. And you need to work on your test plan. So, considering the condition, let's stick to the deadline of 19th of December. This will be your deadline for the test plan in order to get some feedback from me. And let's see. So these are the sections. We're almost done, huh? One more minute and we're done. These are the sections that you will need to write in your test report, and the 2 lines that are in bold. These are the things that you will need to write in your test plan. You need to write the research questions, basically, and then you need to make a plan for your experiments. A little bit in more detail. So the research question will be the main question, the sub-questions are the measurement questions. This is all explained in the previous lecture. It's already recorded, it's online. You can listen to it in order to know exactly what that means. And then you need to make a planning of your experiment setup. What are you going to collect before the experiment? What are the procedures of the test? So I want to see exactly in the test plan. What are the steps that you're going to make in order to get the data that you need. So the measurements that you need to answer your questions, and what data are you going to collect after the experiment? So the questionnaire, and then what questions you ask. And then hopefully with my vast experience and knowledge, I will be able to give you some feedback to improve your plan so that your experiment can go much better. Okay, this is the end. Thank you very much for your attention. Let's see how much time we have left. So we have 45 minutes. I will walk around, look at your, okay. So who had the questions already prepared? So you guys, okay, nobody there? Okay, cool. So I will walk to you guys, we'll look at your questions and we see if we can improve them. Okay, and I guess the rest can start work on your research questions. Thank you very much.